Welcome to week 8, and just to say, here we are. Okay, so we're going in, we're winding down to these classes, going from having a lot of subjects covered, and now I'm narrowing it down to more limited subject matter. And so while we did post-colonial Africa last week, that also included several different African nations from the continent of Africa. Here, I'm actually going to really thoroughly cover one small conflict that looms large in discourse throughout the world. And so I'm hoping that you'll get a better understanding of it. For me personally, I've had my own journey on actually what made me take so much interest in it. This is somewhat my expertise. I believe I've even read at least 20 books or more on the subject. I got really invested for several reasons. I grew up in a very religious environment that would lead me to take certain ideas about the Israel-Palestine conflict. I had some Jewish friends. I went to a synagogue and watched some presentations there on that. Then I made friends with a Jewish man who was actually very pro-Palestinian and opened up my world to a set of ideas that I was not exposed to. And then Palestinian friends. And then I just started kind of following the discourse and going to a lot of the debates and discussions that would take place at universities and the houses of worship. And then I also came across just a wide range of Christian Zionists, Christians that believe that the rapture of Jesus, that now Christianity and Jews and Israel have some sort of relationship together to help bring in the end of the world. And it's interesting, on my Roku, if I look at I have a lot of different stations on there, religious stations as well. And there's so many stations, they look like they're going to be a Jewish religious station, and I click on it, and there's a menorah, and the next thing you know, it's a Christian station that's really are embracing certain things about Judaism and Israel, which is interesting, right? Because throughout history, this is a fact, Christianity has been one of the main persecutors of Jews, even more than Muslims, actually. And there's books written on this, lots of books by very conservative authors. It's just a fact of history. And yet, this is what's going on now. The U.S. government, the largest military aid recipient that the U.S. government gives to another nation is Israel. And so our political establishment is highly invested in the state of Israel and in the conflict. And so I think it's really just so important for you to follow. And at the same time, in the Arab world, and by broader extension, the Islamic world, this is the bone of contention. This conflict really, really is a source of massive agitation. And for many Jews in the world, this is the creation of the state of Israel was a proper result of the Holocaust. Although this is a myth, the Holocaust is only very indirectly has something to do with the creation of the state of Israel. One could argue that it really makes a terribly tragic point of why Jews felt they needed to create a Jewish state. But all of this was going in motion prior to Hitler and fascism and the Holocaust. And, it's a whole other complicated sort of discussion, and it's worthy of a discussion of what really the Holocaust and its relationship to Israel really means or not, in terms of its development and why the state of Israel was created. Because Israel was created in 1948, right after World War II, and so it's naturally to assume there was a Holocaust and then finally Jews get their own state. But as you will see in the lectures, there was a lot of things going on the background prior to World War II even, in getting this going. Now, I do show many things from the Palestinian perspective that you don't see other places. So I have these links to read. And I have one by the late Edward Said, and he has the article is Zionism from the standpoint of its victims. And this is just something I wanted you to see. For Palestinians, for Zionism, as you will see in the lectures, it is something to liberate Jews. It's not intended to oppress or hurt anybody else. Its sole intent is to give Jews a state and liberate Jews. But what Palestinians feel about this, because they were the majority living in the land of Palestine, they obviously have a different take on it. I wanted you to see that. Now, I then give two documentaries. One that is pretty nuanced, I think, by PBS. And the other one is a German documentary on Hajj al-Amin. It was a Palestinian nationalist leader who actually collaborated with Hitler and the Nazis. Now, I go to these demonstrations, I go to these discussions all the time, and Hajj al-Amin is always brought up by the pro-Israel side. And so I thought that I would expose you to that history of why they're bringing it up. But is it fair to, let's say, blame, because one Palestinian nationalist leader collaborated with the Nazis, that he then turned, that all Palestinians are like Nazis? That's sometimes the way it comes off in some of the discussions. But then at the same time, he's not talked about at all in almost any of the discussions I've heard from the Palestinians at all. Like, he's just not talked about. So I just thought, well, after going to all these discussions and hearing all these things, I wanted to expose you to all of the things that I thought that would maybe give you the tools to approach this context in a very informed way. And then you're going to write a paper, one from the Palestinian perspective and one from the Israeli. Now listen, I have my own bias. I hope it doesn't shine through too much. We all will take a bias. When there's a conflict, if you study it heavily, you will start to take a bias in terms of who you think is, you're going to side with in this. Now, what I'd like us to do, though, is really break away from racializing this conflict. This conflict, in the discussions that I hear, racism gets put out against Jews and against Arabs all the time. And so our discussions, I would like to make sure that you really check yourself. That we're asking ourselves, okay, we have two different groups of people that have different set of circumstances. There's some opposing ideologies, and there's a fight over land. And if you're going to have your point of view reflected in it, that's fine. But we're not like, it's respectful, even if you have a more confident statement about what you think. So I just like to keep that in mind. Okay. So, if you guys have any questions on this, if you have any issues with the things that I'm saying in this particular one, if you're one of those who's really invested in it, and you think that I'm skewing things a certain way, or you think that I should draw out something else, or that I was wrong, or blah, 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 like, let me know, because again, I know, by the way, this is the last thing I'm going to say. On college campuses, you go to a lot of college campuses, this is the number one topic the students are yelling at each other about. It creates a lot of division. People taking one side or the other. I actually was at when I was going to UC Santa Cruz, there was an Jewish Israeli professor who sympathized with the Palestinians. She said so in one of her classes, and a whole group of her students just walked out of her class. And this kind of stuff was happening on the daily at the time, and that's a whole other topic about the social reactions that people are having towards this conflict. But I'm not going there. I'm just trying to help you get more informed, so that if you're going to join that discussion or that debate, that you've got some more information to work with on that. And I hope everybody just gets salam and shalom, a little peace, okay. And that's where I'll at. Anyways, give me a call if you have any questions, as I said.